It'll be just a minute for that to go live. And it's almost there. And we're live. So I'll let you take over, Shelly and Councillor Perkins.
Welcome, everyone. Before we begin, Juan, would it be possible to go over the different accessibility options for this meeting?
Absolutely. I have those right here. And I think I do. Escape. There they are. Now I'll share my screen. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Human Rights and Equity Commission meeting. For those of you participating from the community, there will be a time for you to be able to participate and provide public comment. We will be using the raise hand function. Also, if you are joining us, give me 1 second so I can have that in place too. If you are joining us, we also have the ability for you to use the closed caption if that works best for you. If I'm sharing that. So that's, you can, let me go back on this. That went too fast for me. So we have closed caption available for you. When the closed caption, when you're ready for it, you can use the closed caption button located in the control bar for Zoom. And we also have Spanish interpretation or live Spanish interpretation available. And you can use that. These are the instructions. So para ustedes, para todos aquellos que hablan español, tenemos interpretación en español. Y también podrán tener la oportunidad de darnos su opinión. Si usted quiere escuchar esta junta o esta sesión en vivo en español, por favor use el botón de interpretación en Zoom y seleccione Spanish y seleccione Mute Original Audio para que solo escuche en español. También si usted nos está escuchando, nos está viendo en un teléfono o en una tableta, por favor, estas son las instrucciones para que usted escuche el canal en español en Zoom. And those are the instructions that I have at this time. We also have ASL interpretation available. So I'm going to stop sharing to provide the ability. So here we have our ASL interpreter. If you require this ASL interpretation, you are welcome to pin this thumbnail so that it's always in front of you and you can always have access to this ASL interpretation, as well as to see all the thumbnails of the participants. And those are the instructions that I have. And I'm happy to bring up those later if you'd like me to, again, Councillor Perkins or Shelly, just in case we have people join later as well.
Thank you, Juan. Thanks so much for this. Welcome, everybody, to the first meeting of the Human Rights and Equity Commission. My name is Megan Perkins. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a Bend City Councilor. And I am the liaison to this committee. And that means a liaison, City Council liaison basically means my role is to listen and to occasionally offer information that might be of use, to cheerlead, and most importantly, to keep the other city councilors informed about this commission and your work. For many in Bend, this commission has been a long time coming. It was the result of the hard work of a lot of people, and you'll hear about that today. And expectations are high. I'm here to let you know that the City Council stands beside you in this work. We know we have blind spots. We know we have so much work to do, especially as 6 of the 7 of us are white, cis, and heterosexual. We look forward to this relationship and the opportunity that this commission has to change the city for the better. Thank you for giving your time and sharing your experiences and your story, and thank you for caring about our city. I wanted to start with a land acknowledgement. In future meetings, should you decide to consider to continue with land acknowledgements, which I imagine you will, you're going to determine how it is read, by whom, and even if you'd like to change the one that I'm reading. This is the one that is read at the beginning of each council meeting. The Bend City Council would like to thank the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs for offering this land acknowledgement for us to read during our meetings. We encourage everyone watching to learn about the Indigenous people whose homelands we occupy by finding your address on this map. We have an interactive map, and utilizing the additional resources provided below. We would like to acknowledge that the beautiful land known as Bend, Oregon, north to the Columbia River, is the original homelands of the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. The Confederated Tribes ceded this land in the Treaty of 1855 while retaining regular and customary hunting, fishing, and gathering rights. The Warm Springs, Wasco, and Northern Paiute people inhabited this area in certain seasonal times that clearly established their presence. It is also important to note that the Klamath Trail ran north through this region to the Great Celilo Falls trading grounds. This trade route expanded the impact of commerce between tribal nations. We acknowledge and thank the original stewards of this land. It is our hope that guests continue to honor and to care for this land. All right. You know, today, so much of today is getting to know each other. So sort of to start the process, we were hoping that we could go around our virtual room and have everyone give their name, what they like to be called, their pronouns, and just take a minute or two to share why you're here today and what brought you to the Human Rights and Equity Commission. And I guess I can do this by just sort of looking at my screen. So I'm going to have to call on you. So I apologize. Jose, you have the honor of being first.
Hello, my name is Joe Valdez. And so what brought me here is just I saw the opportunity to get involved with my community. And well, I put my name in the hat and ended up working out that I was able to join this, you know, and I guess you also want me to put in he and him, I guess, I believe.
Thank you. Lamar.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lamar Davis. I am a senior at Summit. And this year I've been the equity coordinator at Summit and involved on like social justice club and diversity and equity club. And we actually got this commission to have a youth voice on it. And I threw my name in the hat as well. And here I am today and here talking with all of you. And I go by he, him pronouns.
Thank you, Lamar. Sherry?
I am Sherry. I use the pronouns she, they, and I've been doing social justice work for a while now. And what brought me here was an opportunity to amplify the voices of those who have been ignored or have been harmed, and hoping to work with a great group of people to reduce harm for our community.
Thank you, Sherry. Melissa?
Hi, everybody. My name is Melissa. I am a grant writer with Habitat for Humanity here in town. I have the pleasure of having 5 biracial children, and up until recently have been too afraid of my own voice. And this last year, the world seemed to change, and it's been a hard year. And so I'm here for them and for other kids and humans who look like them, but also I'm here just because I also get to do DEI work at Habitat, and it's just so important. My pronouns are she, her.
Thank you, Melissa. Kay?
Hi, my name is Vincent. I use they, them pronouns. my background's in mental health and social justice. So I just wanted to bring that to the forefront and just kind of, again, like Sherry said, bring voices that have often been ignored to, our local government. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Kay. Jody?
Good afternoon. It's nice to meet everyone virtually. I can't wait for us to meet in person someday soon. I am a recent transplant actually from South Florida. I grew up in Minneapolis and a recent transplant from South Florida. And I identify with he, him. And I am just really, really excited actually to participate in this. I've been driving and working with inclusion and acceptance work in our organization at St. Charles, as well as been doing this work with others for a number of years in organizations I've participated in. So just really excited to be here with everyone.
Thank you, Jody. Mo?
Hi, everybody. I'm Mo. I use she, her pronouns. Let's see, I've lived in Bend what feels like a long time now. It's about 14, 15 years. And I've been involved in kind of mental health work. I'm a mental health therapist, DEI work, and activism. And this committee just sort of seems like a good intersectionality of all that. And I also really feel like it's important to speak truth to power. And I thought that this would be a good avenue for that as well. And it's nice to meet everyone. And I look forward to the day when we can just be human beings in a room.
Human beings in a room. Yes. Elizabeth.
Yeah, hi. I am Elizabeth Johnson. I identify as she, her for my pronouns. I am a nurse, a mother, a grandmother. I am originally from Warm Springs, have moved to Bend just in 2019, just before the pandemic started. Much of my work that I've done in nursing has been kind of all over different fields of health, all in Central Oregon. So I have worked for the Department of Corrections, I've worked in the hospitals, I've done contract nursing in emergency room settings, and now I currently work for the Oregon Health Association, or Health Authority, doing infection prevention. So I'm specifically working in COVID right now. I've also done long-term care here in the city of Bend when I first moved here. So I feel like that broad spectrum of experience, I've seen and experienced a lot of different, whether it's good or bad, different experiences surrounding equity, both for myself and my family, as well as for those I work with and that I care for. So I thought this was, again, kind of like what Mo had said, a nice intersection between all of that to be able to offer up some of my own experience and be able to hear from others and offer up them a chance to be a voice.
Thank you. Jasmine?
Hi, everybody. My name is Jasmine Wilder, and I own a business called Honeybees Digital. It's a brand communications firm. I joined this board because I saw an opportunity I'm actually a longtime Bend resident, or Central Oregon resident, I should say. And I saw an opportunity to be a part of the strategic future of laying groundwork that is looking through an equity and inclusion lens as we continue to grow and prosper. I have a background in strategic communications, branding, and I feel really passionate about that intersection between solid communications and the transformation of systems. And I think because I see this commission as being something that's really about planning and looking towards the future, it just felt like it would be a good space for me to roll up my sleeves and join in with all of you and be a part of being a part of positioning Bend and where we're headed.
Thank you. Adrian?
Hello, everyone. My name is Adrian De La Rosa. I currently work for a nonprofit here in Bend for, I think, going a little bit over 2 years now. When I first initially started there, my main goal was to find barriers to help these communities here in Bend that historically have not been or have not had a voice. And when I saw this committee kind of go by, my moral compass has always been to find the voices and help them get the voices and build a relationship to reduce those barriers for them. So yeah, the committee perfectly aligns with that moral compass that I've always really had. So I jumped on it right away, and very, very excited to be a part of it. Excited to meet all of you and in person soon, hopefully. And I go by he, him.
Thank you, Adrian. Olivia?
Hi, all. Olivia Dudo here, she, her. It's really nice to see all of your faces, reading your bios. I was really blessed to be part of this group. I wanted to join because I firmly believe that change, revolution, transformation can happen within systems. And I look forward to building sort of anti-racism, anti-capitalism into the future of Bend as it grows for the better for everyone.
Thank you. And Ayla.
Unmute. Hi, everybody. Ayla Crosswhite. I go by Crow actually to honor my ancestors, Brave Crow. I'm enrolled on Standing Rock in South Dakota. So we have a long history of causing trouble for people who cause us trouble. So the reason I'm here is more of a sacred duty. I also identify as Two-Spirit. So I find it like part of my personal mission to protect women and elders and children. So I feel like by being on this board, I can give them a voice. So I want to make sure there was an Indigenous voice on this board. I'm glad there's two. It's awesome. I came here physically to be with my partner who's studying counseling at OSU. I grew up in Iowa. I spent some time in Minneapolis. My career is mostly in broadcast production. So I've worked in local news. I worked for the Minnesota Lynx and Timberwolves in Minnesota, which was also awesome. The Lynx also have a great history of social justice work. And then I'm here now and I work for Deschutes County at the moment, producing Zoom meetings. So I just came from one of them and I came here, so I'm a little out of breath, but I made it. I'm here, it's awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, they, them pronouns too. I put that in my thing, but yes.
I believe, Shelly, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the only one we are missing today, the only person we are missing today is Shireen. Is that true? Okay.
Yes.
So hopefully Shireen can make it at some point at this meeting. We'd love to see Shireen as well. Thank you, everyone. Would anyone from the city staff like to introduce themselves? Or you can remain in the back.
Sure, I'll go. I've had the pleasure of emailing with many of, well, all of you, but my name is Shelly Smith. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a senior management analyst in the city manager's office, but I have the privilege of supporting this important work, both internally and with this commission. I also work helping with our homelessness and houselessness efforts. And so I really appreciate having the opportunity to support you as a team. So thanks.
And I'll also introduce myself. My name is Eric King. My pronouns are he, him, and I am the city manager of Bend. I've been in this role for about 13 years, been with the city about 14. And I started my career kind of working in local government around social justice issues and worked for the city of Madison in the affirmative action department, and then worked in Portland, working with communities to help integrate folks that were transitioning into a community-based housing, so group homes and other community residential siting programs, and then kind of grew into administration roles. And I'm really happy and pleased that we're all here today, and I too look forward to meeting you in person and working alongside you and co-creating a better Bend. So I'll stand back and just listen and do what I can to help support your efforts.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Winters. I use she, her. I'm the city attorney, and I and our legal department have been working with Eric and Shelly and city council to help get the code and to research other commissions. And I'm just thrilled to meet you all and to see that this has finally come to fruition to have a real commission in Bend. So thank you for being here.
Hi. Oh, sorry, Megan. I was going to introduce myself just because I'm going to be behind the scenes. My name is Kayla Duddy, and I'm the Deputy City Recorder. I will be doing a lot of the staff support for this committee and helping Shelly out wherever she needs help with, and also taking the meeting minutes. And my pronouns are she, her.
Thanks.
And I'll jump in since I'm here. Welcome, everybody. My name is Juan Almeida, and I have the privilege of serving as the city's IT operations manager. And my job here is to provide the technology support to help you as a commission in the community participating be successful with this meeting, and also our staff. So whatever you need, technology perspective, that's what I'm here for. So thank you for your service, and welcome all.
Thank you. Before we move on to the next part, we've all been on Zoom now for over a year. How do you best want to have conversations as we go through this sort of agenda today? Do you want to raise hands either virtually or with a little raise hand feature? Do you want to just unmute yourself and speak? Does anyone have any opinions on what works best for them?
I think with this many people, it's probably best to do the raise hands, which I've seen works well with lots of people in meetings.
All right. Does that sound okay to everybody? Okay. All right. So Shelly, we can move on.
Okay. So Juan, would you mind bringing back the slide deck so we can use that for our next piece of this agenda? Thank you, Juan. So I think we'll start just making sure that everyone is familiar with our agenda today. Thank you, Councilor Perkins, for launching us in this time together. We'll talk a little bit about city advisory commissions and committees. So helping you get a little bit of a lay of the land and understand better what your role is as part of our community here. We'll talk a little bit about, we'll have our city attorney, Mary Winters, talk about laws related to ethics, public meetings, public records, and then have time for you to ask questions. And then we'll talk a little bit about how did the Human Rights and Equity Commission launch and how did it get started? What is the purpose and structure? I'm sure you're all familiar with the tenets of this commission, but we really want to make sure that we give you some of the background of how the commission was created and the structure of this group. We'll have a time for public comment, and then Councilor Perkins will wrap us up with next steps, which includes talking about next steps in electing a chair and a vice chair, those types of roles, leadership roles within the commission. And then talking more about the logistics about how and when you'll meet next. And then we'll be providing you with an update on our equity and inclusion director hiring process. I know this is a 2-hour meeting, so at some point we may want to take a short break, but I'll leave that to Councilor Perkins. But just logistically wanted to make sure that we met the needs of your time over this 2-hour period. So Juan, next slide, please. One more. There you go. So you'll be hearing more about your role as part of this commission moving ahead, and more about the city operations from Eric King, our city manager, at a future meeting. But I wanted to take a moment and talk a little bit about how City Council and advisory commissions and committees work together. So as a commission member, your role really is to make recommendations and advise the full City Council. City Council receives your direction, your recommendations, and they make decisions on what will happen next. They also receive input from other advisory ways. They receive information from community members, often during public comment, through emails. As you can imagine, our counselors receive a lot of input from our community about a variety of issues. They also hear input from staff members, especially related to our council goal progress and things that are important for them to make decisions in a holistic sense. So it looks really simple in this model, but it's really important to understand these relationships. Our city council will give direction then to staff, who will then implement the different policy direction, program, and resource development. Much of what city council does to create structure is they create council goals on a biennium basis, and there's budget associated with that. So much of the time when they're looking at their priorities and their goals, they use those council goals and direction and budget as a baseline and as a guide for their work. So one of the things that I think is also very interesting and that I wanted to highlight is that sometimes council, and I think this will happen quite a bit with this commission, that council will ask committees and commissions to provide input on a specific issue. An example of this could be that happened recently is the council received information and received input about fossil fuels traveling by rail through Bend. And they asked the Environment and Climate Committee to really look at this issue and provide input to the full council so that they could better understand a direction that they may want to take with that issue. Another example could be for this commission is things related to what you all are bringing to the table. And that is a focus on equity and inclusion. So the council may come to you and say, Human Rights and Equity Commission members, we are asking for your advice, for your opinion, for your recommendations related to a very important policy decision. And we're looking to hear from you specifically about a certain aspect. So you'll, as a commission, will discuss that and may take the next step of a written report to council, or you may come to a work session, representatives of this commission come to a work session and provide a verbal presentation to council on recommendations and direction that you would give to council. I think Councilor Perkins mentioned her role as a liaison, and I think she offers your team and this group a lens and a background of what the council, how their policies are set, and the information that you can use to make better decisions as a commission. Next slide, please. We have quite a few advisory bodies in the city of Bend. This is a representation of the council and the committee relationship to council. You'll see that we have the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, a budget committee, as I mentioned, Environment and Climate Committee, and you'll see your body there too, your Human Rights and Equity Commission. So these are all advisory commissions, committees, advisory councils. There's different names for several of the different groups, but all have an intersection and input into city council direction. There also are city manager advisory committees. And it's important to note that these are directly connected to Eric King, and that he will hear information from them and and provide leadership for those different committees and task forces. But they're a little bit different, so I wanted to show the structure of how this looks. I want to encourage you, if you want to learn more about any of these commissions, committees, advisory councils, to visit our website and select council committees. And you can go in and you can read more about any and all of these important decision-making and important groups within our city government. All right, next slide. So on the right of the slide, you will see the new 2021-23 City Council goals. This is a great model of our council goals with equity, as you'll see in the center. And this will be an icon that will carry through for the next 2 years and highlights the council's decision to focus on these 6 goals. So how your commission engages in specific ways and formal ways with the city council includes the council goal setting process, which is a formal process, as I mentioned. We are right towards the end of this process, and our fiscal year starts July 1st. So all council goals will be set. The strategies are being, action plans are being created under each strategy. It provides the bigger picture, as I mentioned. It really provides some guiding tenets going forward. It determines budget, this goal setting process does, and direction for our organization. Quarterly check-ins are an opportunity, a formal opportunity for this commission as well as staff to help support reports on progress towards our council goals, provides updates and recommendations to the full council. We have some semi-formal committees, subcommittee structures. The council stewardship subcommittee is a semi-formal regular meeting that will happen that this commission could bring topics to, and it's a discussion format. And the 3 counselors serve on each of our subcommittees, and they are listening and engaging in a wide variety of topics. This commission will likely fall under the stewardship subcommittee, and so every time that they meet, we'll be reaching out to ask what types of issues you'd like to bring before the subcommittee as appropriate. We talked a little bit about council liaisons, but each city commission or advisory advisory board has a council liaison. And then the last one is work sessions for our council our council meetings. We have work sessions at the beginning of each of those council meetings. And work sessions are an opportunity for topics to come up and for commissions, advisory committees to have input with the full council. So this is just a summary of the ways that you will be engaging with city council, and just wanted to provide that as a little background and some structure. And as I mentioned, in the next coming meetings, you'll have more information from city staff around the way that city government works and more information to help with your work moving forward. So are there any questions on the slides that I just shared with you? I can't see. Oh, I think Lamar has his hand raised. Lamar?
Yes. So like, how can we connect with the other commissions? And is there like a certain protocol around that?
That's a great question. I'm going to turn Councilor Perkins or Barry, you have more information.
I can address that. So as Shelly mentioned, there's council subcommittees. We often invite several of our boards and committees to be part of that conversation on topics, as well as those quarterly updates that Shelly mentioned. That's their opportunity for integration. I'll give you one example. Right now, we're talking about some legislation around housing to make middle housing more available in our community. So we have representatives from our neighborhood group, our Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, our Economic Development Advisory Board, and Planning Commission all working together to help solve that problem. So I envision the Human Rights and Equity Commission will be integrated with other boards and committees trying to solve issues that are part of those council goals, transportation, housing, et cetera. So we do try to integrate those boards and committees, because a lot of the issues that we're dealing with, you can't put in a silo and with one group. They're issues that we all care about, and we need to make sure all those voices are heard.
Lamar, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Looks like Jasmine has hand raised.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. First one is, are you going to make that deck available, or is it just publicly available somewhere already? Or can it be available to the rest of us? And then the second question is, can you explain what the difference between a committee and a commission is?
That's a good question. I think I'm going to hand that over to Mary Winters.
Hi, Jasmine. Yeah, the city has more commonly had committees and then a few boards. There isn't really a legal or technical difference between committees and commissions other than what cities call them. There is the Planning Commission has been the main commission we've had, which is required by statute. So that is one that you have to statutorily have a planning commission, and they have what's called a quasi-judicial function. They make planning decisions that are binding on parties. So sometimes we've wanted to not have other commissions because it can be a little confusing as to their role, but the short-term task force, the strong recommendation was for this body to have it be called a commission. And I think the city staff and city council deferred to that recommendation. We have a code provision for committees, boards, and commissions. And if you look through all of them, there's only a few commissions. And the intent isn't to maybe have them have different statuses. Really, they all are bound by the same rules and how we appoint, how they're managed. They're really all the same in our code. It was just the recommendation that it be called a commission. And so that's what we did.
Jasmine, did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Did someone answer about the deck being available?
Yes, we will make the deck available.
Thank you.
I will take that on. Any other questions before we move on to the next part of our agenda? Okay, I don't see any hands raised, so Juan, I'll turn it over back to you. I think we're moving into the presentation by Mary, or nope. Okay. Actually, I think the next section, Juan, is Mary's presentation, and then we'll come back to this item on the agenda.
Perfect.
Okay. So hello again. I'm going to talk to you about public meetings, public records, and ethics. And before I start my presentation, I just wanted to say, like, why is the lawyer talking at you about laws at your first meeting? You probably are wondering, don't we have better things to talk about? And really, I mean, besides, as you probably know, public records being a hot topic at the moment, one thing we have found with really many councils and committees over the years is that these issues come up, like how you hold meetings and how you respond to records requests. It matters. And if you're a year in, that can be really distracting and kind of confusing. And so we have started a practice of, instead, at your first meeting, giving you the background. so that you understand kind of the parameters of the law and you have a better sense of how the law works in these areas. So that's why we do it at this first meeting. And in all of our committees, we have a lawyer come and kind of explain it. So I guess one thing I'd like to know, do any of you have you sat on a government committee or commission before? Just raise your hand. You don't have to do the hand raising function feature. Doesn't look like it. So that's just kind of good for me to know. So I will. So that's sharing, right? Yeah. Okay. So you are what is called a governing body, and this is under the public meetings law. And that means that anytime you or a subcommittee makes a decision for the city or a recommendation, the public meeting law applies to you. So it doesn't matter that you are private community members, you're a governing body. Shelly already went over these other committees. The question comes up is, what is a public meeting? And it's really when a quorum of you is together to make a decision or deliberate towards a decision or a recommendation, then it becomes a public meeting. And really the main thing that means is that we have to provide notice, minutes have to be taken, and it has to be open to the general public and ADA accessible. So sometimes with different committees, we will get a question like, why can't we just hold a meeting at a place that is better for particular geographic parts of our community or members of our community? And we at the city staff can be quite open to that, but we do always have to remember that it's also really important that it's ADA accessible, which can sometimes limit the locations that we can hold meetings. So that's something to keep in mind if you would ever like to meet elsewhere than the kind of standard city places that we tend to meet. We have to make sure that we're ADA accessible. A question came up early in this process about the ability of your commission to meet in executive session. And executive session is where you meet outside of the public, like council meets in executive session. And while committees and commissions can by law meet in executive session, there are fairly limited purposes for exec session, like real estate transaction, attorney-client privilege discussions, some personnel matters. So there aren't very many reasons that you could meet. For example, private dispute resolution, that is not in statute. That would not be a permissible reason for meeting in executive session. So that's just kind of the background on the difference between an open public meeting and a private meeting. If you're on a nonprofit board, for example, you might be more used to being able to meet in private, and government is much more limited. All your discussions and deliberations have to be made in public, and the trick is, what is a deliberation? And it's just a pretty broadly defined term. An issue that comes up with a fair amount of frequency with committees and boards and commissions is, what if you want to have subcommittees? Well, the law is that if a subcommittee is formed, it too can become a governing body of its own, so that if a quorum of the subcommittee wants to meet, it's subject to the public meeting requirements if what it's going to do is make a recommendation to your commission. So if it's only fact finding, if you just task a subcommittee with finding out facts on something that you investigating and reporting, then it doesn't necessarily and most likely would not need to be noticed. But if you're trying to you've got a lot on your plate, you don't want you have too much to do, you say, let's task 2 subcommittees to come back with a recommendation. You just need to then work with the city to have those meetings be noticed public meetings as well. And that's not something we have to resolve today. Like I said, this comes up with a fair amount of frequency. And then we talk to the committee about it and whether a subcommittee needs to be noticed or not. Probably the biggest and most confusing change in your lives when you become part of a city commission is the email and texting concern that you will hear us raise. And of course, city councilors will get an email from their city attorney office when we think this is becoming a problem. And that has to do with you don't get your business done at the meeting. You want to keep talking about it, and somebody raises it in an email to all of the other commission members, and then somebody hits reply all, and you start to discuss it, and it's part of your business. You will then get Shelly or one of the lawyers, we will say, please stop, you can't do that. That is discussing your business outside of a public meeting, and the law doesn't let you do that. So the normal thing that all of us do, which is talk to each other via email, via text, via Facebook, via Instagram, all of the ways we do it, you have to be very cautious. Now it's a quorum of you, so it's a majority. So you can still talk to one or two people, but you also have to be cognizant that there are cases about serial emails. So if two of you write each other and then forward it to three of you, and it starts to look like you are asking questions, what do you think of this issue? Or here's information I have. And we start to get concerned that that could be, the timing doesn't matter. Just if the timing extends out and you are starting to look like you are deliberating towards a decision or a recommendation, you have to be careful. For that reason, we tend to discourage discussing the commission business on social media, because if a lot of you start posting on a particular topic on Facebook, then it can start to be a discussion of a quorum of the commission members. Now, what I am not saying is that there are, particularly with this commission, there are going to be issues of which you are concerned. You are all concerned about houselessness, for example, and you want to talk about it on social media. I am not saying you can't do that. It's only if a direct issue is in front of you. We are asking you for a recommendation on a land use, like what does the commission think about a particular land use code that it relates to doing away with a particular, we've already adopted it, but let's say we had asked you to weigh in on the safe parking code we just adopted, which allows RVs and other tents and things to park on private business properties. Say we had asked you to weigh in on that and you started to talk about it on social media, we might say that's in front of you. Wait until it's adopted. So I hope that makes sense. If you have, so that's all I have on public meetings. Does anybody have any questions? I can't see all the hands. I don't think I see any though.
Mary, I don't see any hands raised right now.
Okay. So public records are extremely broadly defined, and so this body is subject to the public records law. Public records are any writings, and again, it includes words, documents, images, sounds, text, emails. Probably the most important thing to understand about public records is that since you do not have a city email account, correct? They won't have any city email account. Isn't that correct, Shelly?
That is correct right now, yes.
Yeah. So you will be getting a lot of documents from the city. You may be corresponding some on city commission business. If you just make sure that city staff, first Shelly and then the new equity and inclusion director, are copied on anything that you write from your personal email account. If we got a public records request, we would respond to it without having to ask you what is in your email that we don't know about. In the past, we have had some issues with public records requests from exchanges amongst committee members that we didn't have all of them. And then that just means we have to go into your personal email, and we would prefer to avoid that. So really the best practice is to always copy city staff so that there's never an issue with public records. This gets a little bit trickier if you're texting and it's substantive. So you don't really have to worry about texts like late for a meeting or can you meet for coffee to talk about a particular issue with the commission. That's fine. But if it's substantive, then that's a public record and you have to retain it. So we encourage city employees to not use text and city councilors for substantive city business at all. So we would encourage you to operate in the same way. You know, anyone can ask for a public record. There's no nexus required, no relevance required. Generally, the motive and the identity of the requester is not something that we get into in deciding whether to disclose records. And really the default is in favor of disclosure. It is a disclosure law, not a confidentiality law. There's quite a few exemptions, but some of them are outright exemptions, but those are fewer. The other ones are generally balancing exemptions, which means the city has to balance the public interest in disclosure against the language of the disclosure. And the law really favors disclosure, and we take that seriously. So unless there is an exemption that can be applied, we disclose records. We tell city staff regularly and public officials, even when you're writing about city matters, you know, you want to be aware of the way you express yourself. I mean, we all should be aware anyways, but even more so when you're working in an arena where everything is a public record. If for some reason you had records that were not within the city system, they are subject to records retention. You can't destroy them. That gets quite complicated and really is more in the city recorder's realm than mine. Again, it's just a reason to encourage you strongly to have the city retain all the records related to this commission so you don't have to worry about it. So again, any questions?
I think Councilor Perkins has raised.
I just want to say that when I saw this presentation during orientation for council, it's really scary and it's really confusing. So if you didn't, retain all of it, what I would suggest is just ask away. If you have any questions, just ask about any of this as we move forward. And it is a lot, and it's not something that we're used to in our regular lives. So, just be aware that it's Mary's heard it all. Mary's heard all the questions before. So do not hesitate to ask.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And I will just say, you don't have to ask now. I know our time is limited and it's your first meeting. You can email me or any of the other attorneys. We are happy to answer your questions. We'll give you our phone numbers. You can call us. So there is no reason to understand all of this right now and to even know what your questions are, because your questions will become more apparent probably as you get into the business of the commission. So my last topic is ethics, which we didn't used to talk about with committees and commissions, but it came up, so we learned that we needed to. And so the other thing you are, besides being subject to the Public Records and the Public Meetings Act, you are now, I'm sure to your great delight, you are now a public official for the purpose of Oregon ethics law. So although you're a volunteer and you don't have any remuneration, if you have been elected, appointed, or selected by a public body, you become a public official. So what that means is there's just a few sections of the law that you have to think about. There's the conflict of interest, there's the taking advantage of your official position, which doesn't really come up, and then there's gifts. So I'm going to go over those again, just briefly. For boards and commissions, the biggest one is the conflict, and actual conflicts where you have to recuse yourself don't come up because you have to be the decision maker. And what you are doing is making a recommendation to the city council. So what you have is at most a potential conflict of interest. And a potential conflict of interest is always cured by disclosing it on the record. So we do have committee members who have disclosed potential, and then you can go on about your business. You are just protected by disclosing it. The reason to be careful of this one, this is kind of a unique area. The conflict laws apply to you as an individual. So while we are happy to give you advice, if somebody makes a complaint, the liability is on the public official. It's the same for us, for all of us employees and for city council. And I think the Ethics Commission gives some leeway to volunteers, but it is something that you want to take seriously just because it is an issue for you as an individual. So the potential conflict comes in when an action, decision, or recommendation you make, the effect of which could result in a financial benefit or detriment to you, a relative, or a business with which you or the relative is associated. So I'll give you a couple examples. Some of you may have been heard when we were doing the septic to sewer conversion. We had a committee, a lot of parts of Bend were on septic systems, and we were looking at providing sewer to those areas. And we intentionally had a committee with quite a few homeowners in the area because they were the ones affected. So we wanted to hear their views on what different programs, there's a lot of different mechanisms for conversion, local improvement, a lot of particularly financial mechanisms. They made a recommendation to council, some of which included that the city ratepayers help fund the conversion to the sewer system for those homeowners, which ultimately was adopted, that there was public funding of that system. They declared that conflict on the record, the ones who would be benefited by that program. They just have to declare it. It was fine, but that protected them if somebody ever made a complaint. I was trying to think, when would an issue maybe ever come up for any member of this commission? And just kind of thinking in my head, I thought, well, let's say you were asked to look at our purchasing code, and we were trying to look at how we have, if not a local preference, what our code provisions say about minority and women-owned businesses and what kind of preference we give. And we wanted a recommendation on those code provisions. And one of the commission members owned such a business. They could be or their relative owned such a business. Could they be benefited by a change in the code based on that recommendation? there's something called a class exemption, which maybe would apply, but setting that aside, that would be if you know you own a business or a relative owns a business that could be impacted. What you do is you call us up, you call the lawyers up, and we help you talk through it to figure out, is there any issue? The Ethics Commission staff are really easy to talk to. We do it regularly. So that's just on that topic to keep in mind. If a decision, and you know what you do better than we do to know if there could be a conflict. And then the last thing is a gift. And state law prohibits public officials of accepting gifts totaling more than $50 in any calendar year from a single source if they have a legislative or administrative interest in the decisions or votes that you're making. So this again is a little obscure, but how I try to think about how this could come up, and this could be, let's say we were doing equity mapping and it related to multifamily businesses, and a local developer invited you to a fully paid Christmas party, and there was going to be, you might just ask, well, what is the remuneration for that? You know, at the same time, you're making a recommendation on something that possibly they could have an interest in. That's kind of how that issue comes up when you're offered something and you are making a decision. You just want to think about it. And again, we're here to help you talk through any issue. There's some links in this presentation, and again, any questions?
Looking for hands, don't see any yet. Any questions about any of Mary's slides? Okay. Oh, Lamar.
I was a little confused on the email slide. So when we're reaching out for email and like emailing like any of the public officials or the counselors, should we have like a separate email than our personal email when we're emailing them?
No, you do not have to have you can have a separate email. You don't have to. You should just make sure that you're copying city staff so that we have a copy of all your emails. So if the public records requests come in as broadly as this, we want all emails to and from the Human Rights and Equity Commission to every city staff and to every person in the public from 2020 to 2022. We could get and then we would ask you, in every email that you did from 2020 to 2022, do we have a copy of all of them? Did you email anybody other than what? And if your answer is yes, then we say, oh, good, we have all your emails, and we can decide and go through whether any are exempt, like maybe something was attorney-client or fell within a personal privacy exemption. But if you say, oh no, I had a community member that was writing me and I wrote back to them directly and I didn't copy city staff, and it was about a topic that, you know, whatever the equity mapping, then we'd say, oh, well, you need to provide us those emails. And it's just, you know, a bigger issue for you than if we have all of them.
Lamar, did that help answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Any other questions? Okay. All right. Councillor Perkins, do you have any, before we move into the next piece of the agenda, do you have any questions? I see that we have an additional member that's joined us from the commission. I don't know if you want to take a moment.
Shireen, we didn't get a chance to hear from you at the beginning. I'm glad you're here. Do you mind? We all kind of went around said our names, pronouns, and what brought us here today for the Human Rights and Equity Commission. Do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Sorry I'm late. My name is Shireen Azodi, and it's such a pleasure to be here today. I've been in Bend for about a year now. We moved from the Middle East, and I've now joined St. Charles on the continuing medical education team. And it's just such an honor to be with you all. I'm very passionate about human rights issues. It's my academic background is in human rights. And so I really am very interested in, and I can't wait to dig into the real issues.
Thank you, glad you're here. Does anyone need a 2-minute stretch break or a little rest before we move on? So if you'd like a couple minutes, just if you could raise your hand, and otherwise we can just keep going. Okay. Shelly, I guess we're going to keep going.
Okay, sounds good. Juan, would you mind bringing back?
Sorry, I think I saw a bunch of hands raised, and I know I raised my hand.
Oh, okay.
Can we take a couple minutes?
Looking for virtual hands. Okay.
Oh, that's my fault.
No. What do you think, Shelly? Should we just do like till 5:10? Does that sound good to everybody? It's 5:06 right now.
Yeah.
All right.
So, yeah, meet back here at 5:10.
Let's stretch and do what you need to do, and see you at 5:10.
Great. Thanks. Okay, should we jump back in? It's 5:10. Okay, great. So we'll bring back up the slide deck as reference for our next part of the agenda. So part of being on this commission is understanding the background, purpose, and structure so that you all can be successful. So what I thought I would do is talk a little bit about how we got to the point of having a Human Rights and Equity Commission. For many years, the city has been focused on diversifying our hiring practices. We've looked at ways that we can increase our focus on inclusion and equity internally at the staff, with the staff at the City of Bend. But more externally, in 2017, City Council adopted a resolution that really declared Bend an inclusive and welcoming city. And I know that that sounds like a marker point, and it's the intention of what we want to do and what we're always striving to become. But later in 2019, at the council goal setting biennium process, there were specific strategies that were created to guide and direct the next 2 years of our work together. Those strategies really created an opportunity for training to be a focus of the city council, of city staff, and volunteers. Another component of that strategy was to really look at how we were doing as an organization. We hired Allyship in Action, which is a local consulting firm here, and they conducted an organizational assessment for the City of Bend. Another part of the strategy was to create a short-term task force or committee to really assist in identifying the needs and priorities of underrepresented communities in Bend, and to provide the basis for their recommendations to council on what this commission would look like. And then the last strategy was to launch and establish a permanent commission, which is what you all are serving on. So what I wanted to talk about a little bit today is the task force that was formed came together. They came together at the beginning of the pandemic, unfortunately. They had one meeting in person in February of 2020, and then after that met virtually and really spent a lot of time trying to figure out how we navigate in this new world and gel as a team and provide this very important input to council. They identified those needs. They made a specific set of recommendations to council on the key elements of this commission. And I think earlier in the conversation, we talked about how important those recommendations are. And we provided in your meeting materials the final report that was made from Allyship in Action to council that outlined the recommendations from community stakeholders, from the short-term task force members, and also from Allyship in Action, their professional and collaborative recommendations that they put together in this report. I'd encourage you, if you haven't had a chance yet to read that report, to try to do so. I think it provides much of the background for the work that's been done so far. It was a culmination, obviously a process, and I want to take a moment to highlight the members of this task force. They spent hours of their time dedicated to providing input and recommendations that were thoughtful, that were discussed together as a team. And I also want to thank Allyship in Action for their hard work in making sure that this was a thoughtful process, that it had structure, and that it resulted in really a guiding document for council. I thought it would be best to hear from one of the task force members. So we've invited Keisha Kubuta to join us today to talk a little bit about the DEI task force and the recommendations they made to council. So I'm going to turn this the floor over to Keisha to talk a little bit more.
Thanks, Shelly. Everybody see me? It's hard for me to tell. Oh, wait. Thank you so much for the invitation to be here. Welcome to everyone. I was really honored to be a part of the task force. I know that the members selected for that short-term task force came from a lot of different backgrounds, and that was definitely very intentional, of course, to get a lot of different perspectives and what we contribute. I personally, my experience, I'm the executive director of a local nonprofit, Campfire Central Oregon. We do youth development work here in Central Oregon. And I personally identify as biracial with Asian heritage. And I grew up in Hawaii, which is a very multicultural place, but I've lived in Bend for close to 20 years now. So I, as Shelly mentioned, I do hope that you all did have a chance to read the recommendations. A lot of what I want to share, I'm going to just skim the surface of content that's in here. So I won't go into it too deeply, but yeah, you could go to the next slide. So the thing that I want to really try to frame is that when we came together as a task force, it really was grounded in this principle that we want equity and social justice to be integrated into all aspects of the work of the City of Bend. And so setting up the commission was certainly one kind of a big part of formalizing that, but really to think about how equity and human rights really affects the work of City of Bend strategically, operationally, and fiscally. So we, the framework that we used was really to start with a very diverse, small, the task force, and then making sure that we were setting the foundations and our recommendations for members of the permanent commission to really broadly represent all people that we were, concerned to have a voice that have been marginalized or underrepresented on this committee, as well as setting the framework for all city commissions and committees to have that be a priority. So just to kind of things that we considered that we wanted to just make sure that they weren't overlooked were acknowledging having contributions from people who don't read, write, or speak English, of all immigration statuses without any fear. And also just even technology access, that we could make it accessible for participation, people that don't have personal computers or don't have smartphones or tablets, those that are caring for children or others. So even having the possibility of some physical support to help with childcare or transportation if they don't have a vehicle or access to rideshare services. And then, of course, having access for all disabilities, diverse abilities, and the access needs that people might have. And that was not an exhaustive list, but certainly we really wanted to verbalize and prioritize those. Next slide. So then through our work on the task force, we provided the city council with recommendations for consideration. These were the primary topics: establishment of the commission, removing barriers to service at the city, offsetting costs of participation to increase that access, and creating a very diverse and representative commission, as well as providing appropriate staff support, which I know has been mentioned, and we're really excited to see that a full-time position is being created, and Shelly's going to talk more about that later. So we were certainly clear that the first task of the commission, which is you, would be to flesh out in more detail what's going to be possible within the bounds or the, in the structure of a commission. So we were careful not to overstep or get too in the weeds of what we wanted to recommend, because that's your job. So it was really just kind of setting the stage, some things to consider. So then the roles that we really kind of looked at for consideration, and again, the recommendations document will go into this in more detail, but we recommended looking at investigating and responding to complaints of discrimination and or violations of the Bend Equal Rights Ordinance. As was already mentioned, advising City Council on DEI issues, including the equity impacts of policies and practices, the needs and priorities of marginalized and underrepresented communities, and strategies to increase engagement with these groups. And then creating and providing regular guidance and feedback on the implementation of a DEI action plan for the city that is responsive to the evolving needs of historically marginalized and underrepresented communities, as well as the capacity of City Council and staff. So again, I think this is the exciting work ahead of you all as a commission, is just really what is the work that you want to prioritize and focus on. And I'm excited for you. And I think it's going to be really wonderful, wonderful work. Are there any questions that anyone might have, just specifically pertaining to the work that the task force did? I see Ayla raising your hand. Yeah.
Yes, hi. I did read through the summary report. It's a very nice report. I don't know if everyone got to it, but it's really nice. I did.
Ayla, you're choppy. Is it just me, or is everybody can hear her okay? Is it just me? Okay, go ahead.
So I read the summary report. I did want to mention that within the definitions, they defined LGBTQ plus, but they didn't add the 2S for Two-Spirit, which I think is very important if we're going to do land acknowledgements. We have to include them. We have to include me. We have to include them, no matter how small that population is. Like, it's 2 letters in an alphabet soup. We got to add it. It can't just be in the plus.
I'm sorry to say that my audio, I could tell that everybody else was hearing, so I think it's just my internet connection. I honestly, it was all chopped out and I didn't hear any of that. So I'm really sorry. I don't know if someone else, Megan or Shelly, wants to sort of, is there any response? I really didn't even hear any of it. I'm so sorry.
Yes, I heard that, and I think that is an excellent point. And I think as we move forward, we will add that. So thank you for highlighting it. That's so important. We're learning, we're growing, and we need your input to move us forward. So thank you. Are there other questions? I'll try to help with translating with Keisha.
Yeah, no, sorry. It was actually my headset and I took it off and now I can hear fine. So I apologize for that.
Are there any other questions for Keisha around the work of the DEI task force? Okay. Keisha, thank you so much for being with us today. We appreciate it. Okay, so I think what we'll do is maybe I'm going to deviate and not have the screen be shared, if that's okay with everyone. And Juan, would you mind putting us back in a mode where we can see each other on the big screen? I think you're probably all getting tired of the slide deck. I am. I'm going to talk just a little bit about, actually, I'm just going to wait.
I'm sorry, Shelly, is that not what everybody else is seeing, the gallery view? Are we all good? Oh, perfect. Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Maybe just me. I will change my format here. So the next thing that we wanted to touch upon is the purpose and objectives of the Human Rights and Equity Commission. So many of you probably have already read this, but I just want to read it out loud. And that is that the Human Rights and Equity Commission will ensure that historically marginalized and underrepresented people and communities in Bend have equal access to city programs and services, representation in city decision-making, and a venue to raise concerns and complaints about discrimination. And that's the purpose that's written in the code and ordinance. And specifically called out in that document are some objectives. And I just want to highlight these foundational objectives for all of us. One is that this team really is focused on creating input to City Council on goals and policies that use a lens that is focused on exactly what's outlined in the purpose. And so I think, one of the things that we're really looking to this commission to do is to provide that input that will help guide and direct council in creating more inclusive, equitable, and diverse a diversity aspect of the policies. Another part of what you'll be doing together is creating an action plan. And that action plan will be created to address the evolving needs and priorities of our community, and will engage the community members and interested groups. So bringing your input that you've received from different community groups and underrepresented communities will be very critical in your work ahead in creating that guiding plan. And so that's the third one, is that community engagement. And then the last one is really providing opportunities for people seeking resolution and assistance regarding complaints of discrimination. And I want to just clarify a little bit about that, to say that your role is to connect people with resources and assistance, and that when people are coming to share with you what's happening, that you're taking note of that we're working together to seek that resolution through connecting to resources in our community. And that we're not, this body is not authorized to compel participation, so we can't require people to participate, and we can't require specific action or impose penalties or economic sanctions. It's really an opportunity to open the floor, to hear what those concerns are, and to make sure that they're connected with resources within our community. So I just want to make sure that as we go forward, that you take some time to really look at the code and the ordinance, and that's listed on our Human Rights and Equity Commission webpage, and it also should be in the packet of information that we sent out. So with that, I think I want to open it up for questions. I'm sure that you all are very familiar with what you signed up, what you applied to be a part of, but I just wanted to make sure that if there are questions, we can try to answer those now. Okay, looks like, sorry, I'm having a hard time. Aya, did you have a question?
Ayla, me?
Sorry, yeah, sorry, yes.
Yeah, I was just wondering, like, within the definition of our purpose and objectives, why it says like equal access and not equitable access, since we are an equity commission. I think that would be something that maybe we could look at in the future.
Mary, did we look at that, or when we developed it, or do you have any memory of that language?
Recollection as we went kind of around the terms with the short-term task force. And some of the language came from their recommendations, but I'd have to look back at all my notes. But yeah, I mean, that's something we could definitely look at. My suggestion would be that if the commission ever wants to revisit the code, that you kind of look at things comprehensively, because every time we amend, we have to do an ordinance change, which is a couple readings. And it's just good when we open up a code to amendments that we don't do it like repeatedly, that we do it, you know, once a year or in a more comprehensive way. But it's certainly, eventually that might be something on your agenda, that you'd like to just tweak the code language in maybe even other ways.
Ayla, I'm going to make note of that, though,
yeah,
our records going forward, and I think that's a really important point. So I just want to, you know, I think Mary, we set code and ordinance, and she just gave us a little update on that process of changing. But I think going forward, that's an important note that we can use.
Yeah, definitely. I'll make a note as well.
Okay. I thought I saw other hands raised, but
I see Melissa and Jasmine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi. I have a question about the discrimination complaints. Do you have those that you're waiting to present to us? And so none yet. Okay. I just wondered how the public knew to bring those to the city.
Mary, I'm going to ask, I think that's part of the law creation for this commission.
Yes, and to clarify how so we looked at models of equal rights ordinances and ordinances setting up commissions, not just in Oregon, but in other parts of the country. And they mostly, when they talk about complaints of discrimination, they almost always tie them back to the city's own equal rights ordinance. So they're not just complaints of discrimination not attached to something. So the way we wrote it is complaints, we already have an equal rights ordinance. It's somewhat dated, but the city has one. And the things that we cover are discrimination in places of public accommodation, employment, and housing. It isn't all discrimination. So it's a little bit narrow, and our equal rights ordinance doesn't create a cause of action in the city. It says this is a private action and that you would go to BOLI or to the EEOC. So to answer your question, even if somebody was going to make a complaint, it should be tied to our equal rights ordinance, which is common. I mean, kind of the issue is there are so many laws out there covering discrimination already. There are many, many laws that people can have challenges under, and we don't have the jurisdiction to take over those areas or the resources to supplant the laws that already exist. So that's why what Shelly was saying, we're more geared towards being a resource to help people navigate those somewhat complicated processes at the state and federal level. That's kind of what the role of this commission would be, is to help navigate the resources out there.
And if I can butt in, another thing that I saw as this was being formed was the idea of restorative practices, you know, that would come from these situations as well. So.
Yeah, if you had two parties, let's say a place of public accommodation, there was a complaint of discrimination, and the business agreed to come in and be part of the commission's process. If you wanted to go down this path, we'd need to develop some rules of what would it look like? How would it work? Like, if this is something that you want to spend your time on, then we would need to develop the rules of procedure of how would you do it, which would be a task for another day, obviously. I forget which, it was a city in Colorado that had a really good website on how to find resources. Like it was from their Human Rights and Equity Commission, but it was just so helpful and user-friendly. That was something that they must have been involved with to like help people navigate the systems. Like sometimes that's the first step.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you for that question. Do we have other hands raised?
Jasmine and Olivia.
Olivia. Okay, so Olivia.
Jasmine, you were before me. Do you want to jump in? Okay. This might be more of like a technology or process, potentially even legal question. Is there a way to enable the reactions and chat capability on our Zoom calls? And then I guess follow-up question to that for our group. Do we want to be able to use chat and reactions as we meet together? Or do we just want to stick with hand raises? Two-parter.
I think so. If I hear you correctly, what you're asking is, would this group want to enable that option? And two, if that technology is available.
Yeah, I guess first, is it possible? Second, is it like legally okay if we're using reactions and typing things in chat? And then three, does this group even want to use those? So maybe flip those, but all three are questions.
So maybe
Juan may need to weigh in. I think we have resisted doing it like at council meetings because it's all public records and also just the public can't see. So the question of whether having something that you're saying that the public isn't aware of is like, I think you see in council rules discouraging councilors from texting each other, for example, during a public meeting, because then the public sees people texting and like, why aren't you listening and engaging in a public meeting? So that's kind of one question for you. Is it appropriate to be talking to each other in a forum that we don't allow the public to see? The next, I think, is then it creates public records we have to retain, but the rest is a one question well over my knowledge base, whether we can do it in Zoom.
And I apologize. Is that directed towards me, Mary?
The chat, Olivia, they wanted to know about whether they can use, if it was legally okay and if they thought it was appropriate, the chat function in Zoom.
And the reactions too.
And the chat function normally is available in Zoom. There was a time when the decision was made that it was best to turn it off. So it is turned off globally in all public meetings. And it wasn't, one of the reasons was what you were discussing, Mary, the legal piece. And the other one was also, we wanted to make sure that, just like we want to be mindful of comments that might be hateful and stuff, we also want to be mindful of comments that might come in through chat that might be hateful, inappropriate, not the best ones for these types of meetings. So that's why at the end of the day, the decision was made that it was best just to turn it off. And so it is turned off globally on purpose. Yeah, not because it's not available. It's just, it was a decision made by leadership. Yeah.
Does that help answer the two parts of the question? One, technology wise, is it available? And then some pieces to consider for this commission.
Yep, all three. I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Jasmine, did you have your hand raised? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, yes, I do. So as people continue to talk, I feel like I might be more of a comment. But as we go over these 4 objectives, what I'm seeing here is that the first one sounds like it's going to move on the city council. The first objective is going to move on the city council and the city goals that are being put forward. But then this action plan, it really feels like the action plan encompasses, if I'm understanding this correctly, the action plan would come first for even objectives 3 and 4. Or I'm sorry, let me flip this around. So number 2 really encompasses 1 and 4. And 3 is one that's going to just come, like, it sounds like it's going to come as needed, as the other, interested groups, staff, and elected officials have need of us or need us to have input on their work. But when you're talking about the discrimination, which is going to require an entire system to go into place, I would actually be very interested in, like, press, for example, like, as we're building these resources for people to come to basically plug people into it. I also think that there is a, argument for helping them, sometimes you have to stand up and you have to fight you have to fight publicly with what's going on. And sometimes, the first step is just helping expose that. So I would want that to be a part of it. But more importantly, I just think it begins with this action plan, like from a strategy standpoint, and then one of our initiatives would be to build out the discrimination, and then to build out point 1, which is to advise, city council on the goals and policies from a diversity, equity, and inclusion perspective. So I guess I'm just saying, I believe it's a comment, and I would like a little bit more insight to how is this action plan going to go into play? Because it feels like most of everything folds out from there.
I'm happy to take that question. I think that the opportunity that this commission has is you get to set that action plan. So I think that's Keisha was talking a little bit about around your ability to shape that action plan. You're right. Some of your strategies and the work you'll be doing will relate to the council goals, tie back to that. But this team has the opportunity to create an action plan. And one of those actions could be to create an online resource for individuals in our community who need to be connected with resources that are not currently available in other platforms. So I think that's the opportunity that you'll be able to develop that action plan as a team. So Councilor Perkins, feel free to jump in there too, but I think that was the purpose of keeping that a little more open and allowing the commission to develop the priorities of that action plan.
Yes, absolutely.
And I will say, in the current budget that it will be presented to council soon, there is funding in that budget for consultant fees or for opportunities for you as a commission to give direction to council on how those funds would be spent. And part of that could be on creating that action plan, helping resource that process. Just a thought. Okay, did that help? I think your comment was really a good question. And I think that you'll be fine tuning that process as you go forward.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I don't see any more hands up. So I think we're at the point in the agenda, if there aren't any more questions, to move into the public comments. So before I do that, Councilor Perkins, do you have any introduction remarks you'd like to say during the public comment section before we begin this?
No, just that I do know that there are a few people here from the public. If you would like to make a comment, I think Juan has the those. If you're familiar with public comment, he can show you. Yeah, there it is. Virtual how to make public comment. You know, one of the things that this commission, it's going to be so important for this commission is to hear from the public and to keep those connections. So I encourage anyone to speak and look forward to hearing from you.
So before we get started, I just want to go on the record saying that we did not receive any written public comments for today's meeting, but it looks like we do have individuals calling in from the community. So Juan, I'll go ahead and let you run this part of it since you are the expert in technology. We have 2 minutes per speaker, and I'll go ahead and let you introduce this.
All right, good afternoon again. We do have one member of the community who has raised their hand. We have Kenny Adams. Kenny, I have provided you the opportunity to unmute yourself. Please proceed with your comment, first name, last name, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Juan. Again, my name's Kenny Adams, he, him pronouns, and I wanted to address the commission. I really wanted to just say that I implore all of you to not allow yourselves to become avatars. Oftentimes in government, commissions like this are used as a way to say that things are getting done and that things are, hey, look, we have put together this great commission that's going to be there to provide equity and inclusion, and it's going to be this great thing. And then all it becomes is just talk. It's just placating to the people that need it the most, and we never see any actual change. If you have the opportunity to actually make change, to progress change and make those suggestions, press for action. You have the city council, you have the ear of the city council, and that is a very powerful thing. Do not let this turn into something that is just you meet, however often you meet for 1 to 2 hours, and you just sit there and talk and nothing ever comes of it. If issues are brought to you and you have good, the opportunity to make good change and to make the suggestions that will actually steer things in an equitable way, we have to make sure that those are pressed to the city council, press them to the city manager, anyone that actually needs to be in the know and anyone that actually can make those decisions, press for that change. And you have to be adamant about it. You have to be stern about it. This is something that we can no longer just play with. We can no longer just have play acting. We actually have to have action, not acting, but action, and hold them accountable. If they say, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and do this, and the next meeting, it's never mentioned, hold them accountable. It has to be done, change has to come, and you can be the spark for that. Thank you.
All right, wonderful, thank you. Next, we have Mike Sucher. Mike, I've provided you the ability to unmute. First name, last name, and please proceed with your comment for the commission.
Hello, everybody. This is Mike Satcher, he, him pronouns. This comment is for the commission members themselves. The city staff can go ahead and tune me out right now if they want to. In fact, it might even be better if they did. I'm going to hit on a lot of what Mr. Adams just said. I know some of you, others I'm getting to know for the first time. If you don't know me, I work for Luke Richter at the Central Oregon Peacekeepers. I'm commenting tonight to say that each of you are excellent choices for this commission, and I'm really glad you're here. But I also want to urge all of you to think about who is not chosen for this commission. You probably already know who was left out and why the city left them out. I think you know that those exclusions were not accidental. So ask yourselves, please, where are the organizers of last year's protests? The fact they aren't here isn't a slight on any of you, but it is worth noting. So just please ask questions about that. Please think about these facts, and please try to remember that the city staff are not your friends. I trust that you all know that you're here to speak truth to power. Please don't be afraid to make the electeds and the city staff uncomfortable. They're going to try to tone police you. They're going to try to gaslight you. When they do, make them pay for it.
All right, and I don't see any more hands at this time. Councilor Perkins.
All right. Thank you for that. Thank you, Juan. I just wanted to move on to sort of the last part of the meeting today, which is talking a little bit about what's next. And, you know, one of the things that you see a lot in on city commissions, committees, or the election of a chair and a vice chair. And, you know, usually the idea behind the chair and the vice chair is that these officers help with setting the agenda with the city staff. They help lead the meetings and facilitate decision-making and, you know, help solicit feedback and really communicate with city officials. But, you know, for the purpose of this commission, it doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be a typical chair, vice chair. It could be co-chairs. It could be something that we haven't even thought of. So, you know, the last thing we want to do is impose, you know, a structure or a system when there's already a lot of structures and systems that, you know, are here in city government. So just something to think about for the next meeting of, you know, how do you want to set up this this commission? So just wanted to put that out there. Also wanted to just sort of reiterate what Mary said about communication between meetings. I know on a daily basis, I hit reply all, I send things to people and say, check this out, this is a great article, that kind of stuff. And you just can't do that within this city system. You can't come to decisions or discuss, you know, agenda items if you aren't in a public meeting as a group. So if you do have something to share, Shelly, if this is okay with you, I was going to suggest that you send it to Shelly and she can include it in meeting materials. And maybe that's, hey, look at what this city did with their chair, vice chair, you know, arrangement, or here are some great meeting agreements that that I came across, you know, something, anything like that. Feel free to send to Shelly. And then, as you know, we go forward in terms of schedule. As you can see, you know, you don't just meet when it comes to one of these commissions and committees, that it requires technical support, it requires, you know, IT support. And so because of all the different committees, commissions, groups that are in the city, you know, there really are certain days and certain times that we can meet. So we want to be, you know, as flexible as possible and meet everybody's needs. But would love to get some consensus on, you know, does this day and time work for you all? I guess this is the 4th Wednesday of the month. Does 4 to 6 work for you? I don't know if there's a chance to kind of see nods. We can't do reactions, or is there a better time? Okay, I see a couple thumbs ups. Okay, so it looks like I'm seeing consensus that this, oh, Ayla, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I did have a comment that the start of this meeting does blend into the end of the county commissioners meeting, which will limit our ability to like communicate with them within their meetings or within our meetings. So we might want to bump it back a little later or on a different day, just because Wednesday's their biggest day.
The biggest day. When do they usually, what are the times for their meeting usually?
Wednesdays all day is like 9 to whenever they're done, which is like, could be anywhere between 3 and 5.
Okay.
I want to say.
Okay.
But like, you know, thinking about like other commission meetings too, we don't want to step on their toes and we want to be able to like communicate with them as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Thank you. And myself. Wanted to also make sure that we're meeting all of your needs and all of you in terms of, you know, accessibility, that we're making sure not to, you know, create any more barriers when it comes to participation. So please let us know if there's anything any of you need in terms of accessing meetings, whether it's meeting, and we have iPads. I believe Shelly mentioned this in email maybe. We have iPads that have hotspots, right, Shelly, on them, so that you can, if you need technology and don't have access to that. But if there's anything else that we're forgetting about, again, please let the city know. Excuse me. And then wanted to talk about the Equity and Inclusion Director position. As as some of you know, this is a brand new position for the city of Bend. There were initially 60 applicants, which is, pretty remarkable for this position. It has gone through a series of panels and interviews and is now down to 3 final candidates. These 3 final candidates will be interviewed on Friday, May 7th. And we're seeking you to be a part of that panel that morning. And I wanted to give you all a little quiz. So why could we only have 5 or 6 of you participate in this interview panel? Does anyone remember anything that Mary might have said? You don't want to raise their hand or jump in here? Why only 5 or 6 of you could be a part of this?
Yeah, this is Elizabeth. Is it regarding the quorum and meeting and making decisions? Yeah.
Yes, that is exactly right. Yes, we cannot have a quorum for this. So we would be asking for 5 of 6 of you to help out. It would mean sort of blocking off your morning on Friday, May 7th, because the interviews will be lengthy. So, if you're still interested, please contact Shelly. We really need your input, and this is such an important brand new position for our city. Joe.
Can we send in questions like to ask?
That's a good question. Shelly, would that be okay?
I think you're welcome to send questions in, and we'll do our best to incorporate those questions in the panel interviews.
Great. I love that idea. Thank you for that question. I just want to, we have another question in Mo.
Yeah, hi, this is it's more just a comment and just something I'm noticing. I guess being a part of this group, I'm wanting to know as a group, like how we want to address issues of equity as they show up in the moment in our own group. Like an example would be when someone's misgendered or, things like that. Like as a group, it's not lost on me that as we're in process trying to figure all this stuff out, like the exact things that we're trying to attend to are going to show up because we're all human and it's going to happen. And so one of the limits of Zoom that I'm aware of is like the whole like raised hand feature. It kind of gets rid of that like human flow of being in a room together and being like, hey, by the way, right? And so I guess I just want to acknowledge that they're, just noticing that and just kind of putting that out there. And in addition to that, like noticing inequity as it's being communicated in the sense of like, I wrote a note, there was something about, I think during sort of the legal discussion around, what was it? Like all meetings have to be ADA accessible. And it's notable to me that it's my understanding that the city, like not all sidewalks have curb cuts. So like the meetings have to be accessible, but the pathway or the roadway or the sidewalk to get there is not. And so like that dissonance, right? And so I'm just sort of aware of that and how do we want to acknowledge that and how do we want to like give voice to that? Because I don't want to bypass anything because I know bypassing creates harm, but I also know in groups, if you get stuck in process, nothing ever happens. So that's my comment. I don't know what else to do with that, but those are my 2 cents. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think, one of the things that the Environment and Climate Committee did was come to a series of sort of meeting agreements, which I think, Shelly, you have a copy of that, right? I mean, that might be something to kind of think about for next meeting. And it addresses a lot of those things. Yeah.
Yeah. So that way we don't have to recreate the wheel, but I also know that there are barriers to Zoom, but I just noticing as things come up, like, I just want to make sure it's a safe and healthy culture, I guess is my point.
Thank you.
As part of our next meeting, I could send the sample from the Environment and Climate Committee for this group to look at. I don't want to assume that they're going to fit this commission and how you want to go about creating your commission, but it might be a good place to start. So
yeah, that would be helpful, just to have something to, you know, and other people might have resources as we're talking about this. I didn't want to like end today without naming that, I guess.
Thank you, Mo. And I just want to say, maybe you do a Zoom meeting environment set of like, how do we guide through this process? And then when we're in person, what does that look like? So there's just some.
Yeah, probably.
So, and thank you for speaking up. Just wanted to appreciate you for that.
See, Melissa.
It's just a small question, and I just don't know this, but how do you determine the 4-year versus the 2-year commitments? Is there any decision or any weight to that? I just don't know how that happens.
I think it's different with every commission, and it's just something that happens internally during the process of selecting people, if that's sort of like a political answer, but I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that's just sort of how it's a little different with it. I just want to express my gratitude and also the gratitude of the city and the city council for coming this afternoon. I know that this was a lot of information, a lot of PowerPoints, a lot of listening. And, you know, I do assure you that future meetings will not look, it won't be this way. There will be a lot less of city staff and city council talking, and will be about you and this commission. Just wanted to open it up if there are any final thoughts or things that you'd like to share before we adjourn today. Joe?
I think there is. I think maybe instead of using a raise hand, people could just speak.
Yeah.
To Mo's point. So if you have something, please just feel free.
Feel free.
On the caller, he was mentioning something about people that were supposed to be on the commission or had tried to get on.
Yeah, there were, oh gosh, I can't even remember now. I think almost 90 people applied to be on this commission. And so some people, you know, out of that, it was a process of getting down to 13. I think that's what he was referring to.
And is there a reason why you chose 13 or not more or not less, or?
The code, the ordinance says 9 to 13 members for the commission. And I think there were so many incredible people who wanted to max it out as much as we possibly could under city code.
It's one of our bigger commissions. When we were trying to decide what to put in the code, we knew there'd be a lot of interest. If any of you remember the transportation system committee for the transportation system plan, that was really big. It was 20 some, and like really big committees can be quite difficult to manage and to hear all the voices. You know, sometimes smaller committees, everybody gets to speak more, and that's nice, but we also wanted a big diverse group. So it's just kind of so we gave a range to council. And council, per our charter, the mayor appoints commission and committee members. And then in our code, we talk about having it, then we have the council appoints by motion, and we have a couple councilors help the mayor make that appointment. City staff does not select or really have much involvement other than kind of mechanically helping the process of having committee and commission members. It is a council-driven process. And they went through a lot of interviews and a lot of time for this commission. It's significant what they put in as community members themselves for this.
Also in that, the packet we received, one of the council members was invited, but he declined. What was the reason behind him declining?
So Joe, are you referring to the Allyship in Action report specifically around counselors that were invited to a training?
Correct.
I don't think we were given a reason why that council member was not able to attend. I don't know the reasoning behind why. Sorry.
Sounds good.
I think in the, maybe like in the effort towards transparency and then also addressing what we heard from the community members, what is your guys' reasoning behind the racial breakdown of the people who are here? And for example, I think the direct issue is that there's not enough African-American people represented here. And I would love to know just the reasoning behind that.
During the interview process, as you all know, since I interviewed you, Councilor Schenkelberg and our mayor interviewed, the final decision of who is on this committee is the prerogative of the mayor. Sort of beyond that, I can't really commit to. There was never like a, we need, X many of this person, and this person on the commission. It's sort of from my, this is just me talking. It was sort of an organic thing that happened.
Okay, and then I have one more comment, I'm sorry. And this isn't more so a question, but again, just speaking to the community members, I feel like it is kind of necessary to say, I understand that there's like a lot of local unrest or frustration maybe about the choices that were made here, but I do want to reiterate that I can't speak for everybody of the 13, but I'll speak for myself in saying, I know that I belong here and that through the process that it took to get here, I'm confident in the choice in myself. I would imagine that everybody else feels confident in the choice of themselves. And I'm excited about what this commission can do, but also know that as an individual, I can make the promise to say that I will hold this commission accountable for what it says its objectives are, will not allow it to grow apathetic, that I am coming from a place of lived experience as a BIPOC woman, a longtime Central Oregonian, and someone who has very vested interest in seeing systems transformation. I will also just kind of want to add that just, basically give it a chance, because while I empathize with the frustration about how things went about, and I also have had, people have received emails from me already about thoughts that I've had on the processes here. Here we are, and this is what we've been given an inch, and guaranteed, we're capable of taking a mile. So give it your full, give it your full belief, at least for a while here. Give us some time. Give us some time to prove that we can carry this out. We can hold people accountable, that we can be fire starters, that we're not passive nor safe or any of the other things that I've heard leveled at the decisions here so far, at the decision to have the sport so far.
I have a couple things to say that kind of piggyback off of Jasmine, and I think I'm going to say it because, like, when I look at this group, it's a very light-skinned group. There's not a lot of melanin here. I'm a light-skinned Indian, like that's what happens. But I was wondering, in that process of like fairness and choosing this council, did we consider doing blind interviews to mitigate like anti-Black bias? Like, was that considered? And do we need to consider that in the future for future council members? Because I think that if there was maybe a blind interview process, that this council might look a little different, even though we are all very qualified. We all know that implicit bias happens. It just does. And we want to, it's our job to mitigate that bias as much as possible.
Thank you for that. That is a really excellent idea and something that I will bring to the council.
Also piggybacking off of what Jasmine just said, I am standing here for the youth, and as a student advocate, I just want to say that I will be a fire starter as well. and in everything I do, I will hold accountability.
Thanks, Lamar. Well, if anyone else has anything to say, I want to respect your time as well, because it's 10 minutes past 6. If not, do we need like an official motion to adjourn, Shelly, or can we just go for it?
I think we should have an official motion.
Oh, sorry, I heard a voice. Oh, second it. Oh, someone seconded it. Okay. Great. All right. Thank you, everyone, for this great first meeting. And hope you have a lovely evening and are able to get outside and enjoy the weather. I know, Joe, I see you already outside. And thank you for all you're doing for our city.
Thank you. Nice to meet everyone.
Nice meeting
Thank